Do you have PCOS and are you trying to get pregnant? Are you tired of getting dismissive fertility advice from your doctor? Do you want to get to the root cause of your fertility struggles? And not only that, not only turn those around, but also feel healthy in your body? If that's you, then this podcast is made for you. Welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Angela Potter. I am a PCOS fertility expert, and I am here to help you understand what your body is telling you it needs in order to turn around your symptoms. I am here to help you feel healthy with your PCOS and optimize your fertility health and get the best chance at getting pregnant. And today you are in for a special treat because I am joined by Judy Simon, a registered dietitian who helps women with PCOS and fertility. And you are going to love this conversation. Judy's going to share her experience after working with women for 20 years with PCOS and fertility. She works in a medical setting. She sees patients. She teaches cooking classes. She has written a book, and every day she is seeing dramatic positive changes with PCOS. So Judy and I are going to talk about what it looks like to have a fertility forward food plan in place. We're going to talk about the really important misconceptions in the medical world about weight loss and PCOS. And Judy's going to talk about some important foods that she sees are key for turning around fertility with PCOS. So let's dive into this conversation with Judy Simon. Judy, welcome to the PCOS Fertility Health Podcast. I am thrilled to have you on the show today.
Hi, Angela. I am such a big fan of yours. You're such a wonderful educator for PCOS for women. So I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. And, you have 20 plus years of experience working in nutrition and
Mhm.
fertility, and you have written a book. And so you are an expert in this area. Tell us, how did you get into the fertility world and PCOS?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. So I came to the beautiful Pacific Northwest, gosh, probably about 30 years ago. Took a little break to have my family, and I had my own individual struggles with unexplained infertility. So took a little break. And when I re-entered, I had the medical world. I really didn't know much about PCOS. And I was working in a family medicine practice, and I kept seeing these young women who would come off of birth control pills, not have periods, have all these symptoms. They would have excess hair, they would have, gaining belly fat. And I was like, what is this? And so I was really lucky to connect up with Dr. Angela Thayer, a reproductive endocrinologist, who at that time also worked at University of Washington. So, just to kind of get to the point, really what I found out is I had to learn everything about PCOS because I hadn't had that in my training. So I really had to work on a multidisciplinary level. And I just fell in love with, wow, nutrition and lifestyle makes a difference, as you know, since that's your whole premise. And so as I started working with these women and working with the fertility doctors, they started sending me all their patients because we finally had data about insulin resistance. Although it wasn't not a diagnostic criteria, most of these women had insulin resistance, and I was lucky to work with a group of docs who really recognized, hey, we should be doing lifestyle first, which is how, I met Angela Thayer, that they really understood this was the core foundation. And so I decided a few years later, about 18 years ago, that I would open up a private practice, really focused mostly on women's reproductive health, PCOS, fertility, and eating disorders. And as you know, women with PCOS have a higher rate of eating disorders, especially binge eating disorders. And so I was able to take my knowledge and experience of an eating disorders background, always seeing it through that lens. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about weight and kind of what people are told and how triggering and dangerous this could be for a woman with PCOS. So yeah, it's been a while. And as a result, and I'll talk more as we go on in our podcast, Dr. Thayer and I, about, 12, 15 years ago, I started seeing all these women one on one, and I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could put them together in a group and we could cook together. And I thought, why not? And no one else that I know had done this 15 years ago. So, literally, in a fertility clinic, gosh, it was like an employee health staff room on Saturdays. We created what we call the Food for Fertility classes. And guess what? The majority of women, Angela, had PCOS. Okay. And they
Okay.
were told back then, just lose weight, kind of like you're broken, it's your fault, lose weight so you can ovulate and get pregnant. So what I did with 10 women in a class, 10 to 12 women, literally in 6 weeks, instead of just telling them lose weight, eat healthy, we actually learned how to do that. We every week would be a different theme, whether it was greens or grains or fish. We would actually cook in this makeshift kitchen. We did get a better kitchen eventually, and we would set goals and we would learn like where are you at and what do you want to try. Like it wasn't a mandate how to eat. And then
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts of the class was at the end of the class we would always take about a 30-minute walk. We were located near beautiful Lake Union, you know where that is, in Seattle. Rain or shine, we learned,
Nice.
just dress for the weather. And these women would take a walk and they would kind of couple up and talk. So a lot of social support, which is so important on a fertility journey. Again, the majority of the women with PCOS. And guess what happened? These women started conceiving without the IVF they thought they had to have, right? So, yes. So we did these classes, I think 10, 11 years. COVID came, and then we switched to a virtual format. So several years into it, Angela, the fertility doctor, and I decided, well, let's write a book. And that's how Getting to Baby came about. And there are several stories from women who had PCOS who went through our classes and with lifestyle were able to conceive. Or if they did have to have any assisted reproductive technology, they had much more success, whatever the weight was, all sizes. And I know we're going to talk about that today because we're such advocates for treat the individual person and not a BMI number. So sorry, I'm a little long-winded, but I've been doing this a long time and I love it. And I love teaching healthcare professionals and the docs and the naturopaths and really being interdisciplinary. We can help our patients in so many ways.
Well, that's just so inspiring, Judy. And to see how many years you've been running these
Oh,
classes and
mm-hmm,
sharing this information and these stories that come from it. Since you brought it up, let's just jump into this
mm-hmm,
really important topic. With PCOS, so many women are just, they go into their doctor and they're being recommended, well, just lose weight and everything will open up for you. And then they're sent out the door, maybe with a pamphlet, but nothing else to guide them on that journey and no other information about what's going on in their body. So, based on your experience,
mm-hmm.
do you agree with that recommendation? And if not, what do you see? I know that answer. What do you see actually is working?
Right. Well, I think it's really important that a woman with PCOS really needs a full assessment, just like you advocate. And so sometimes I'm seeing the women who are sent from like the traditional OBGYN world, they're just focused on, well, do you want to get pregnant? Do you want to cycle? If not, go on the pill. Like, here's your roots. And then I also work with medical endocrinologists, reproductive endocrinologists. And so the OBGYNs go, well, why are you sending them to a doctor with more PCOS? I go, because you're not looking at their whole bodies. You're not looking at their lipids. You're not looking at all the health issues a woman has with PCOS. So she may have IBS. So I'm not going to tell a woman just lose weight when her gut is killing her and she's got IBS and gut issues. And so really what we found is even women, and this isn't even an official diagnosis, as you know, lean PCOS,
Mhm.
those women we now know often carry more visceral fat. They can be athletic and they may not be ovulating. And some of the women I've seen when we measure their insulin levels, glucose tolerances, they actually have really high insulin levels. So are you going to tell a woman who's, 130, 5'10", athletic, probably doesn't eat enough anyways to just lose weight? So that it's not good advice to say just lose weight. It's like, let's look at the whole person. And as you know, visceral fat can be inflammatory, but with lifestyle changes, working on a healthier diet, movement, sleep, the add-ins can often, yeah, women may lose weight. I never promise it. I tell them they'll probably see a change in body composition, but let's focus on your health and your symptoms. What are your goals? Are you trying to ovulate? Are you trying to get pregnant? Do you want to manage hirsutism, alopecia? I mean, people are shocked that drinking spearmint tea for a woman with high androgen levels can be a really effective way to see some symptom management. So I think really knowing that, and I want to tell you, I have women I've worked with, and I'm going to say numbers, so I want to make trigger warning. Some women, with BMIs over 45 or over 50, with, a team working with them on their health, can go ahead and conceive. And even if they do need assisted reproductive technology, maybe it's a sperm issue, maybe it's a blocked tube or something, they can be as healthy as possible so they can get the best results. And as you know, the majority of fertility clinics have these BMI cutoffs. So if a woman comes in with a BMI over 40, they're not even always given a resource. They might be say, just lose weight without any help. I'm lucky in my University of Washington affiliation, where I also work besides my mind body practice. Um, we don't have a weight cutoff because they treat each woman as an individual. They do recommend health, nutrition, optimizing health, but they don't have those same standard cutoffs that a lot of the clinics do due to anesthesia. So I think that's that first pushback that women hear about weight.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening, this is such an important
Mhm,
misconception in the medical world. And thank you for sharing that information that women, they are still getting pregnant regardless of the number
mhm,
on the scale,
mhm,
regardless of BMI. The BMI drives me totally bonkers.
mhm,
And because it's something that many healthcare practitioners just dial in on, and it's
mhm.
completely missing the bigger picture of what's going on and what can be supported to create this vibrant health for these women, right? Which you're seeing.
Absolutely. And, my favorite thing is when I have a woman who has a PCOS diagnosis and she's pregnant. She lets her, OB or midwife know. And the whole time, some of them, they're so worried about, oh, you're going to have gestational diabetes. Like they're shaking their finger. You're going to have these adverse outcomes of pregnancy. And then, often their provider is just shocked, like, I can't believe you don't have gestational diabetes. Well, what a horrible thing to say to someone, anyways. The fat shaming in obstetric care is awful. I mean, it's getting better. I know I get to train residents and talk about it to some, but it's really there. And the fat shaming is still there in PCOS, where people just say lose weight. And now that we have these GLP-1 agonists, I was on a webinar recently with, is there a place in PCOS and when is it appropriate? But for the women I work with, and the majority do want to get pregnant, what I've seen, and, these are their choices, that many of them have gone on these medications. They've lost weight to meet a cutoff. They have to go off the drug 2 months before their IVF procedure, and they gain the weight back and they tell me, oh my gosh, Judy, I'm absolutely starving. So are we really in a better place? And we don't even have the data to know, are there even better outcomes for these women with PCOS that have been on them? So I'm not saying there isn't a place, and that could be a whole nother podcast on GLP-1. But what I'm saying is, as a quick fix, or women wait a year to lose that weight and their eggs are older and they're less fertile. And data has shown that, intensive weight loss 12 weeks before IVF did not show better outcomes. And really what we care about is take home babies for those women. So, putting them on a really oppressive diet to try to get the pounds down, and, when I first started the classes, I kind of, thought a little bit about weight 15 years ago, but, we got the data and I saw the women. I'm like, you don't have to necessarily focus on losing weight, but getting healthier, you know, improving your lipid levels, improving if you're in prediabetes, which we can do with nutrition, fitness, sleep, and supplements.
Yeah, so, for my community here and people who
Mhm,
are listening,
mhm,
many people have been given that recommendation. And for so many of us, it's instantly that, like, well, I need to go on a low calorie diet in order to
mhm,
lose weight. That's
mhm,
still a very common thought process. But
mhm.
what do you see as being some of the more important first steps
Mhm.
to creating a healthy fertility diet, not thinking about the weight, but thinking about your
Yeah.
overall health?
Right. So I see a lot of women with PCOS because 80% of insulin resistance. Well, a typical pattern, and I know we're all unique, is they'll wake up in the morning and be like, I'm really not that hungry. I'm not going to eat anything. I'm just going to have some coffee to give me a little, I'll just drink coffee. And then maybe 1 or 2 o'clock they're eating. And so I often see that they're eating a lot of the food later in the day and they're really hungry at night. Okay. So we
Mhm.
want to screen, is there a binge eating disorder? Is anything else going on? But really, what I try to work with women and what we talk about in our book, and Getting to Baby is a perfect book for a woman with PCOS who wants to conceive, is understanding how food works in your body and that you need energy throughout the day, no matter what size you are. Okay. And that you don't have to eat a typical breakfast. If you want to, flip things around, it's okay. But trying to have that balance throughout the day, that you're not drinking, straight carbs or straight protein, you kind of having more of the mix of meals and snacks. So if you love, yogurt and oats and, kind of an overnight oat thing and fruit, and that's your jam, that's great. If you like a hot breakfast and you want to have eggs and veggies and do the more omelet, that there's a lot of balance. But one of the things we want to make sure you have during the day is, we want to be anti-inflammatory. So we need fruits, vegetables. If you do eat animals, having fish, having those benefits. And, once patients, what I find, these women add more fiber to their diet. If I got to say one thing, I got to call it out for fiber. Like, oh, gee, my gut's feeling better. I'm like pooping like a champ. Do you know what I mean? When your gut feels good, you start the day better than having, a lot of gas, a lot of bloating or anything like that. So I really find kind of the add-ins, like how much fruit are you having a day? What's seasonal? Can you, instead of maybe eating something really ultra processed for a snack all the time, could you bring an apple and nuts? Really asking people to challenge themselves and say, what feels good in my body? And with PCOS, really being nourished throughout the day. Because if you eat that, real simple carb overload, like a lot of my patients drink soda because they're looking for quick energy. And
Mhm.
when they try other snacks or other thing or eating more regularly, they don't have those big highs and those lows. And that's what, a lot of our patients are now starting to wear continuous glucose meters and they're seeing it. And one of my patients did it on her own because you can I borrow them over the counter. And I go, well, what did you learn? She says, well, if I just have sweets or I just have a soda for a snack, my blood sugar is going to go really high and then it's going to plummet and I feel crappy. Direct words, right? So helping them not to shame anything that's sweet, but let's try to add balance. Let's try to add fiber. Let's come up with some new things that work for your lifestyle is really, where I work with patients. I'm very practical. So gourmet chefs, take it up. If you want easy prep, if you want to order some things, I'll help you with how to know how to order those in an easier fashion.
Well, I love that that's a big premise of what you're doing is helping your clients identify what
Hmm.
works for them
Hmm.
because we live in a culture that we've become really disassociated with what feels good to our
Hmm.
bodies, or
Hmm.
we have to follow a certain diet, and
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
we have to just not follow what our bodies are wanting.
Hmm.
And so do you find that people kind of have trouble figuring out at first like what
Yes.
feels really good to them?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, I use a privacy protected log with my patient called Nourishly. And I love it because it doesn't count their macros. They can take a picture, tell me what they eat. And the questions I give them if they choose to use it is like, was this meal satisfying? How hungry were you before and what were you like after? And if we see that they were starving before the meal and then they ate till they were like you know, really too full, we talk about, well, let's look at the timing. So I really try to help women understand eating competence and intuitive eating, helping to give them some structure to get to that point. And then they find out every day doesn't have to be perfect. Because when they go on social media, a lot of the influencers are giving them like this horrible information. Like they're saying there's one thing that everybody should be doing for fertility, and you all have to take out dairy, and you all have to take out gluten, and you all have to be low carb and keto, and then go exercise and do this and take hundreds of dollars of supplements. And so my patients come in, they're like, I'm afraid to eat sometimes. So giving them permission to eat and helping them with trying things, like if I have a patient who just says, I feel better not eating gluten, I'm not going to challenge that, but I'll say, well, what about if we try some of the gluten-free whole grains that are more natural? What if we try quinoa and see if you like that? Or let's try some of the other foods and see what feels good. Because I really trust people when they tell me something doesn't feel good, but I want to know, how are you going to get all the nutrients that you need? And there's no data to support going on keto or very, very low carb diets. And so any of the extremes, have not been shown. And from the most recent PCOS international guidelines, there isn't one diet for PCOS. Yet, lifestyle is number one on what we need to look for. And they also talk more about screening for mental health issues, screening, for depression, and screening for eating disorders. So we're making sure each woman is getting the care that she needs, and that is individual.
That's something that needs to be talked about
Mm-hmm.
much more often.
Mm-hmm.
That importance of looking at this person in front of you, their individual needs.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a lot about this weight picture, but
Mm-hmm.
in general with PCOS and fertility, do you see other misconceptions about nutrition and PCOS?
Yeah, I think a group I want to shout out a little bit about kind of the lean PCOS because they're the smaller numbers. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's this crossover between, I don't know if all your listeners know what hypothalamic amenorrhea is, where actually there's a suppression of the reproductive access because for a period of time, a woman is not eating enough. Okay. And this is why we need labs. We need some basic labs, things like, AMH or, some of the hormone levels. Um, a woman of any size, if she's been starving herself or undernourished, so a person who's 300 pounds can have anorexia, and people just are like shocked by that, but they can be starving themselves, right? And that can happen on GLP-1s when people are losing a lot of weight and they're so undernourished, you can really be shutting things down. So I'm always concerned about the woman who comes to me, she's trying to get pregnant, and she has a PCOS diagnosis. She's not cycling and she's not eating enough. And so building the trust and understanding the physiology and the science that the reproductive access, it's in the basement as far as nutrition. And if you're not eating enough to support that function, it's not going to work well, right? And so I think that that's a real area where a lot of times the fertility doctors just jump over it and go, well, we can go on to this treatment. And we really can do a lot helping that underlying cause, making sure women have enough nourishment throughout the day. And if they want to be athletic, great, but they have to eat a lot. And I mean, I just worked with a patient, a 27-year-old with PCOS, and I'm so excited she had heard about my book and reached out to me because I was on another podcast with Julie Dillon Duffy, her podcast, where she was talking about the intersection of PCOS, eating disorders, and all. And so we worked together, and she finally got like a 90-day cycle. It was getting better. And she really wanted to get pregnant. She's under 30. She was so ready. She was eating well, learned to nourish herself enough, sleep, do all that good stuff that we want our women to do. And they were just about to, give her a treatment to get her ready to do like letrozole or something. And she's like, she just had this feeling. She, I'm having signs and symptoms of ovulation. Like I had that, and she's pregnant. And she's like, Judy, it's like, we worked together 6 months. And if you would look at her, Angela, she looks lean. She looks as healthy as can be. But this woman has PCOS, and it was really affecting her ability to ovulate and being able to nourish her and nourish her well. She just had her ultrasound. They go, well, you don't need us, go on to, have a baby, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, I love how you mentioned that the reproductive function is really kind of low on the list. So
Mhm,
you have to be creating this, you have to kind of overcompensate
mhm,
to really support that body to get those nutrients
mhm,
into your hormones and the reproductive function. Yeah. And
mhm.
how often that's just left to the side.
Yeah, there's a story, a couple of PCOS stories in the book. One is about Katie, and I love her story because she talks about, she's in a larger body, very accepting of it, happily married in a great relationship. And she ended up coming to her classes because, they kind of said, well, you're going to have to do IVF, but, you got to lose weight and all that stuff. And she talks about in the book, she was a real meat and potato gal, like that was her meals and that what they did. And what was really fun is from being in the class, she's like, oh my God, Brussels sprouts roasted are delicious. I thought they were disgusting. And so by adding more fiber and more plant food and getting some meal plans and getting some good recipes, she's like, well, gosh, even my husband was benefiting. And we forget these women with PCOS who want to get pregnant. A lot of times the guy has a male factor issue, so they can be as healthy as possible. But when they get healthier, if their partner, if it's a heterosexual couple and their partner gets healthier, he's going to have better sperm. They've way increased their chances for natural conception, right? So, in her case, so I love her story that she just, said, hey, and she got pregnant just with making lifestyle changes and has a very healthy, happy little girl. So I love when people can read stories and be like, hey, I was in that stuck place in not such a long journey. I was able to get healthy enough to be able to conceive. And, I do work with women like you who are just trying to manage their PCOS, whether they're a teenager, but I feel what's so sad is people are getting dismissed at a young age. And if they have those irregular, painful cycles, they might have PCOS and endometriosis. They're going on the pill without a diagnosis. And they don't maybe know for 15 to 20 years later that they get a diagnosis for either of those conditions. And then at 35, 37, they want to have a baby. And they're like, wow, I had no idea. And you go back in their history. So, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's powerful to be doing these lifestyle changes and
Mhm,
supporting your nutrition all
mhm,
throughout the lifespan.
mhm, mhm,
So, Judy, what are some of your go-to
mm,
foods to
mm.
support PCOS fertility?
Okay, I love it. So I want to make sure that, I mentioned eating throughout the day, but when you talk about specific foods, I really try to get people to eat real whole foods as much as possible. Not from the Whole Foods grocery store, but just real whole foods. So, for example, I want them to try whole grains. Not everything processed out of a box. Like I go, quinoa's my go-to, you guys. It's 10 minutes. That's all it takes. And then you've got it for grain bowls and things like that. I really love the power of beans and lentils and legumes because what you see and what I really tell people, because people are kind of all into Ozempic, Wegovy, and GLP-1s, I go, guess what? When you eat things like white beans actually have inositols. Like we recommend supplements, myo-inositol, which is very effective for PCOS. And I go, do you know you get it from foods too? So when you're eating something like from the bean family, you're getting protein, you're getting fiber, but you're getting some of that GLP-1 effect because that's going to be metabolized so much slower and you're going to get that satiety signal. So I really, and you'll see in the book, we have a lot of plant-centered recipes. I'm like, this year, being plant-centered, not vegetarian, but being more plants included in your meal plan it's like having a moment right now in January. It's January of 2025 as we're recording
Mhm.
this. And I'm so excited. Like, I keep finding more like chickpea recipes. How do you make a curry in 15 minutes? So really, like, I'm a big believer of trying, maybe it starts with hummus, ready made, and we show how easy it is to incorporate beans, lentils, legumes, whole grains, and then really green leafy vegetables, getting veggies in. And I'm like, you can eat vegetables at breakfast. You can have cucumbers and tomatoes. Eat what's seasonal. If you have leftover stuff, throw it in your omelet. I'm having an omelet after this, and it's going to have, spinach and mushrooms, and get those veggies in all because they're filled with antioxidants. They're low carb. They're going to give you volume. They're so, so good. I also try to introduce women to using more winter squash, sweet potatoes, again, high in antioxidants, loads of fiber, those slower carbs. And I don't take away things like potatoes, they're delicious. We all like them. But, have them in dishes that include vegetables and protein. And as far as protein goes, I really encourage people, if they eat fish, to try to have it 2 to 3 times a week. Easy ways to use that. Salmon, the cold water fish, having the most omega 3s. And I really find a lot of people feel like when they lighten up that meal like that, it feels really good. So doing like a really easy sheet pan with like salmon, sweet potatoes, and broccoli can just make a lovely meal. Things like that. And then I encourage them, you don't have to take away red meat when you're eating it. Try to eat the best quality that you can afford. Try to limit the ultra processed and the deli meats, which are higher in saturated fat, than more processed. Same thing with pork. And then I kind of say chicken's kind of neutral, but having a protein in the meal where some of it might be from plants, but there's such a push on protein, and I think a lot of people are going overboard. They just hear like a number of like, how many grams of protein should I be eating? And I'm like, do you know you need at least 25 grams of fiber? Let's get in that cup of raspberries. Boom, you're a third of the way. I try to show them a serving of beans. Boom, how do you see some fiber in every meal? And I've had women say, Judy, I gave up macros and I just check in on my fiber grams and I feel liberated, right? And I feel better. So I want to have that basic, palette of lots of color, lots of fruit, vegetables, fiber, balanced with protein, healthy fats, nuts, seeds, avocado, olive oil. And if you can, really try to limit the ultra processed foods. Maybe there's an occasional snack you want to have. Go ahead and have it, but make sure you have that base that's providing you all the nutrients you need. And then you don't have to calorie count, you don't have to count macros, and you can just learn to enjoy food. And that's where I find the most success with women with PCOS, when it's not so rigid.
I love that. Thank you
Oh, good.
so much
Oh,
for
good.
sharing that. And I really think that for the person listening right now, it's like a weight being lifted off their shoulders. Like I just
Mhm.
feel this lightness about what you're saying.
Oh,
And it
good.
just it feel and we know that it's
Mhm.
incredibly nourishing and you're
Yes.
seeing all these success stories.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's not rigid and
No.
underneath all of these guidelines.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
that's wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to link to your book in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. So absolutely, please go and get Judy's book. And where else can people find you?
Well, on Instagram, I'm at Fertile Nutrition. And then LinkedIn, and then of course I have a Facebook page for Mind Body Nutrition, which is my website, and I'm happy to answer brief questions for your listeners and help with resources that are out there. And Angela, thanks for the work you do. You're one of the podcasts, and you're on my official approved list because there's a lot of misinformation. So I love the positive message that you bring to women with PCOS.
Well, thank you so much. That's
Of
really
course.
sweet of you. Well, thank you for being here. I would love to have you on again because you just
Oh,
wow, like I love the information that you are spreading, and it's
great.
so needed. So
Let's do
thank
it.
you.
Let's do it. Thanks so much.
Okay. Didn't you feel so much hope and deliciousness in what she was talking about. Doesn't she have a wonderful way of talking about food and nutrition? And don't you want to just sit down for a meal with her? I loved that conversation with Judy, and I hope that you are able to bookmark this episode and come back to it and check out her book for even more information. I have that linked in the show notes below. So add Judy as a resource in your fertility journey because she has got such a wealth of knowledge to help you with that food and nutrition piece for your fertility journey. If you want to support this podcast, you can leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. And as we wrap up here today, I want to remind you that the information on this podcast is just that. It's for informational purposes only and should not replace the medical advice that you are currently getting from a doctor. And if nobody has told you this today, I want to be the one to tell you that I believe in you and I believe in your ability to figure out the root cause of your fertility struggles, turn those around so that you have optimal fertility, optimal health, you feel really good in your body, and you have the best chance at getting pregnant with PCOS. I'll see you right back here next Wednesday.